Today I want to make a video about my orc army. Now, this is my olive green orc, so it's mainly based on the CMF 24 orc, but if you guys are interested in seeing my troll army, let me know. I want to first go over some of the more specialized characters of the army, and then I want to show you just all the general foot soldiers that I have in the army, as well as my big fig trolls. So let's get right into it. Now, to start off, we have the more personalized characters, and let's start it off with the orc sorcerer. I really wanted to make a unique leader for the orcs, so I started off with this troll queen body and legs, and I added this Lord of the Rings head and hair piece, which I think look really good for the orcs. I also really like the use of this staff that originally came with the orc queen, and it has this green bolt of almost orc magic coming off of it, and I think that works really well for a sorcerer and a leader. Next we have this orc general, and this guy rocks some copper armor with a copper helmet because I really wanted him to stand out from just the regular foot soldiers. I also used this torso from an old fantasy era troll, and I think it works perfectly by adding the CMF arms on. Overall, I'm super happy with how this character turned out, and I think he looks perfect for leading a war band of orcs. Next we have the Skull Crusher, who's a feared orc of the lands. I wanted to give this guy a little lore just because I thought it'd be fun, and I decided to give him the skull shield because I thought it matched perfectly with this Croc Chima torso. I really think the Crocs from Chima are a great way to get some extra orcs for cheaper than the $10 CMF price. I'm really happy with how this guy turned out, and although he doesn't look too crazy, I really think that Lord of the Rings head along with that curved sword gives him a very unique look. Next I have this guy who uses this old Ninjago skeleton armor piece that I think works really cool for an orc. I also use these Chima croc legs, which you can usually get for pretty cheap, and I really think it shows how versatile some of those Chima parts are. I also gave this guy this long halberd, and I really think it gives an overall menacing look. I also really like how the Lord of the Rings orc heads can be used for my more specialized characters, as I feel like they have a bit more character and expressiveness than just the basic CMF head print. Next I have this Uruk-hai inspired orc, and I really wanted to give an ode to the Lord of the Rings because a lot of my inspiration from this army came from the Lord of the Rings. It's nothing too special, I just took the CMF and added some Uruk-hai parts, but I think he looks pretty cool. Next I made another orc using another one of these Chima croc torsos, and I combined it with this cool speckled troll helmet from the fantasy era trolls. I really think this torso especially works well because that red with the cape matches up perfectly with the print, and I really feel like the croc torsos blend in super well, especially if you combine them with the CMF arms like I've done. Next we have this guy, and I really like the shoulder armor that I used, although I'm not exactly sure where it's from. I also really think this Chima torso and legs worked perfectly because that boniness really just gives a rugged feel to the orcs. I also kept the original CMF hair for this guy, but as you're going to notice later on, I really did change up the hairstyles just to not make them look too clone-like. For the final specialized character is this assassin orc, and I really think this pearl dark gray weapons with the shoulder armor just looks perfect, and I once again used these Chima croc legs for a more bony and rugged look. I really think this guy looks perfect despite looking still pretty similar to the original CMF. We next have to talk about the big fig orcs. Now these guys are just some fancy era trolls that the colors just matched perfectly with the orcs, so I was like, you know what, let's just use them as orcs for this army. Now I kind of forgot about these guys when building the army, and as I was filming I realized, shoot, I have these big fig trolls, I really need to use them, and I have not really customized their weapons or them as much as I could, but I would like to give them some more customized weapons and possibly even have mounted archers in the future. To end it off, I have to show you some of the more basic orcs. These guys aren't really divided into units, but I do have general themes for some of the different ones. First off, we have a couple of orc shamans. Now these guys are obviously lower ranking shamans than the leader of the orcs, so to differentiate them I gave them these staves with fire. I used some Lord of the Rings orc parts to give these guys a bit more of a covered and robed look, and I'm really happy with how these figures turned out. Next we have the orc swordsman. Now these guys I wanted to give some rugged looking swords that I feel like would fit for an orc, so I didn't give them the standard knight swords that I would use for most armies, and I gave them these orcish looking swords with the CMF shield. I also gave these guys the standard hairpiece and jaw for most of them, although you will notice with a lot of my other figures I use other hair pieces to mix it up a little bit. Next we have a squad of orc axemen, and I think the axes just work perfectly for an orc, and I can almost imagine these guys storming a castle tower and ready to axe down a gate. As you can see, I did use a variety of hair pieces here, and I really think it gives them a bit more personality and a bit more variety than giving them all the standard orc hair piece. I also gave them all the CMF shield, and the flexible jaw piece works great with the other hair pieces. Next we have some orc bowmen, and I think these guys look great. I gave a couple of them the long bows with the dark brown hood for more of a brown aesthetic, and then a couple of these short black bows with the black hood, and I really like the diversity it gives them. Like I said before, I would like to eventually mount the 2 short bowmen on top of the big fig trolls, but it's kind of hard to build a mount, and I've been trying to figure it out. Overall, I think these guys look great, and I really feel like bowmen work perfectly for range units of an orc squad. For my final minifigures, we just have these orcs who have these knives, and I think they look pretty cool, and they give off that sort of assassin vibe for the orcs. I don't really give sais to anyone else because they're more of a Japanese weapon, but I thought they'd be pretty unique and they work well for the orcs. These guys aren't anything too special, but I think they look really nice. So that's it for my orc army. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, leave them in the comments below, and if you haven't already, subscribe because I make castle videos every Saturday at 12 PST. As always, thank you for watching.